find a recruiter in the company you want to go to and just reach out to them. Say, hey, like, are you guys hiring? I think that's the first question nowadays with, we see a lot of companies not hiring. And if they say, oh yeah, I'm hiring, just say, hey, don't just send them your resume. Don't say, here's my
Yeah.
resume. Say, okay, well, I'm really interested. Go look at a job. I'm really interested in this job. You have like 10 minutes to chat about it. And, just make that intro and make yourself stand out.
Welcome to the TechGuide podcast. I'm the show's host, Ryan Atkinson. Everyone is wanting to break into tech and have a successful career. The only problem is how. We'll use this podcast to sit down with people that have broken into tech, pivoted their career, or have actual advice to young working professionals. Today, we have Dell Oliver on the podcast to talk about the pros and cons of contract work, how he was a recruiter at Amazon, and the advice he has to anyone wanting to break into big tech like Amazon, how to tailor your resume so you can be noticed by recruiters, and how to stand out in this tough job market. Make sure to follow to subscribe to this podcast and share with any other friends that may want a tech guide in their life. You can also learn more about us at techguide.org. We have Dell Oliver joining us on the podcast today. Thank you for being here, Dell. I'm super excited to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I'm stoked to be on here.
Awesome. And before we dive into the nitty gritty of recruiting, job finding, all of that, I got to ask our opening question of, you have a busy day. It's been a long day. You're recruiting all day. How are you de-stressing from work?
Oh man. Well, I'm not looking at my bracket because that'll just make me more stressed out. Really what I like to do at the end of the day to de-stress from work is just honestly, my wife and grab the dog and we go for a walk around the block. Just something simple. Just get it back outside, fresh air, some sunshine. I live in Arizona, so it's usually sunny. Just go for a walk and kind of end the day that way.
I love that. And of course, I have to ask, what type of dog do you have and what's his or her name? How old?
Yeah. So I have a 2-year-old Dutch Shepherd and her name's North, like the direction.
North.
Yeah, she's a rescue and the rescue named her North. And we're like, well, instead of trying to figure out a new name for her, we just kind of like that name. So we just kept it as North. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that. That's a great name. That is sweet. And so let's dive into it because you've been in recruiting since 2018. You've worked with companies like Amazon, GTR Staffing, and now BuzzFeed. Take me to around this time. How did you know you wanted to get into recruiting?
Yeah. So honestly, getting into recruiting, it's one of those jobs when you come out of college, no one really knows what a recruiter was. I had no clue what a recruiter was,
Yep.
And I moved back to Arizona. Sorry, it could be a long-winded answer, but I moved back to Arizona after college from Colorado and went to a job fair here, and there was a company called Legis Global Solutions, which is kind of like part of the Aerotech family. And they're talking about recruiting and hiring recruiters. Like, well, I have no clue what this is, but I gave them my little resume that I had from the work I did in college, and they called me up and said, hey, would you like to come interview with us? And I went and interviewed, and they offered me a job a couple of weeks after. Been there ever since. I really like recruiting. I didn't think I would at first. I was like, well, I'm just sitting here looking at resumes, but growing into recruiting and kind of the satisfaction that you get of especially during COVID and stuff, where you're really placing people with jobs and people that sometimes are really looking for a job and are down on their luck or might be stressing where their next paycheck's coming from. You're kind of like that glimmer of hope that comes in, and really just starting to see the satisfaction on people is what keeps me going.
Yeah, that is really, really quick. I feel like that's a really fulfilling role because at a time during COVID where everyone's losing their jobs, it's like, oh my God, where's my next paycheck coming from? You're able to place them into new roles if it's with your company or with others.
Yes. Yeah. There'd be people I'd be talking to like, oh, I just lost my job. I have family here. And I was the only one working. I had no clue what I was going to be doing next. Like, well, here I am.
Here I am. I love it. Because then you were with Allegis Global Solutions for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
Worked your way up from talent assessor, recruiting sourcing specialist, to a senior recruiter. And then you broke into one of the big boys, Amazon. Take us to August of 2019 when you break into Amazon. How did that happen?
I got recruited. It's really funny. I just got recruited in. A recruiter reached out to me asking if I'd be interested in joining. I'm coming into Amazon as a contractor. I said, well, not going to say no to Amazon, especially, being so fresh in my recruiting experience. And I really just studied. One thing about Amazon is like their interviews are traditionally tough, but if you study and you really read and understand what they're looking for, then it's not too hard of an interview to do. I mean, it's still tough, but like you got the basis, and that's kind of what I did. I just spoke to them, about what I've been doing at Allegis, and how I kind of grew there so quickly, and where I saw myself growing, and just my interest in Amazon and being able to help shape their recruiting organization because we were on a brand new kind of recruiting team that they were just starting up when I came and joined them.
Interesting. And so you started off, I think it's interesting. So you started off as a contractor position. This wasn't like a full-time position. Was that like scary leaving like a full-time position of contract work or?
So at first it wasn't that scary because I'm like,
Mm.
okay, I think I had like, I think originally it was like 4 or 5 months,
Yeah.
and then with the contract, and then they extended it out to the 9-month contract with them, which is the max they can go. And then they started doing their interviews to see what contract they want to convert full time to Amazon. And that
Mm.
was during the peak of COVID. So you're like sitting here, you're like, well, I really hope I do make it on full time with Amazon. And that was definitely a very stressful, like getting ready for that interview,
Yeah.
which luckily I did get hired on full time for them. But it was awesome to learn the Amazon insides and out, and
Yeah.
being on a recruiting team really helped me for the interviews with Amazon. But it still was challenging because as a contractor with Amazon, you you're kind of essentially interviewing that whole time with them. Like they see how you're
Yeah.
successful you are, how you gel well with other people working on your team, as well as do you really follow like the Amazon brand and source, which was awesome. But I mean, you're also working with, you mean it was interesting because we're contractors on a team with full time Amazon employees as well. So like,
Interesting.
yeah, you're seeing how they work, but also like you're like striving to be your coworker essentially.
Yeah. Would you recommend that time? It sounds like it's very stressful because it really is like a job interview for 3 or 4, 5 months on performance. Would you recommend people try out contract work or what are some of the pros and cons people should consider with it?
Yeah. So I'll start out with the cons because I think there's a little less cons than pros. Just simply the cons is like something like a global pandemic could happen right towards the end of your contract, or you never know like how the hiring is going to go. They say hey, you have the possibility to extend or a possibility to come full time, but do they really mean that? Which I mean, a lot of companies do, but there are some bad apples out there where they just say
Yeah.
that just to get you. And then the cons also are like you are a contractor, so you aren't technically a fully fledged employee of that company. So
Yeah.
like there are some things that you aren't privy to. But I think if you are a betting person, the pros outweigh the cons. Like you're kind of betting on yourself. But I think your confidence in yourself on to being able to perform that job really will help out. Especially coming in as a contractor to a company. You yes, you're essentially getting a trial run at the company, but you're understanding how the company works. So
Mm.
it's not even so you might at the end of your contract, you might say, well, why would I even want to work at this company?
Yeah.
So it works both ways. The pros, I think, does get you in the door, gets you more recognized. And at the level of like FANG companies, I think that might be the best way to get in because if at Amazon, we're looking at, I mean, if during the peak of Amazon, during the peak of Google, all that, I mean, you're looking at competing with like 4,000 people for one role. Essentially, I mean, that's probably a little dramatic there. Like,
Probably
but
not that.
yeah, but you're in front of that hiring manager for that role. If not, that hiring manager can reach out to another manager like, hey, I've been working with Dell for a while now. Like, let's, his contract coming up. We don't have a space for him, but I think he'd be a good addition of something the company doesn't want to lose. And so it does have the pros definitely outweigh the cons. And, I think contracting work also, I mean, a lot of times these big companies, there's big recruiting companies like what I work for. I mean, you lose
Yeah.
your contract. Usually that recruiter doesn't want to lose you as their source of revenue, like because they get a percentage essentially.
Yeah.
So they'll find another place to place you at the end of the day. I mean, and
Interesting.
there's some people I talk to and it does surprise you. Like, they love contracting work. That's what they've been doing for their 20 plus years of career. Because they say like, well, if I want to take 3 months off and not work at the end of my contract, I can take 3 months off and not have to worry about vacation when I'm ready to come back and work. I just go find a new contract, that's not
Yeah.
something I could do, but I mean, there are people that like, they love contracting, and I do find it interesting with their mindset, but I guess if you like to have a unique challenge and like a different landscape all the time, that would kind of be the way to go.
So when you went into Amazon, was your mindset though, when you're getting this contract work, like, I want to be here full time, or were you at all thinking like, oh, this is just a trial run to see if I want to be with Amazon?
So I was like, I was probably like 23, 24 maybe at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to work for Amazon. I'm going to rub it in
Yeah.
all my friends' faces that are fresh out of college. Like they're still grinding their way up, and here I am sitting at Amazon. I was excited. It was I was a company that I was like, I'm gonna get this contract. I'm gonna work my butt off. I'm gonna do everything I can to become a full time employee here, and yeah, I'm gonna love it here. And yeah, so
Interesting.
yeah, that was my goal, was to get converted full time with them.
And so when you were like a full-time role with Amazon, I'm curious because obviously you're getting, like you said, like 3,000, 4,000 applicants like a role sometimes. Maybe a exaggeration, but a lot of people and a lot of very, very smart people. So at your time at Amazon, was there something that candidates did that like really stood out to you that got them like at least their foot in the door that other people can do?
Yeah, so there's two big things. One is reaching out to a recruiter on LinkedIn, like, hey, I applied for this role, and I'm interested, like, can you help me? And a lot of
Yeah.
times you're not reaching out to the right recruiter, but a lot of times the recruiter's happy to help you. Like, hey, let me get your information over to a recruiter, and we'll look ahead and try to find your
Interesting.
resume. The second one is, I'm one of those people that I fully believe your resume is kind of like if you're like in sales, it's like your book of business. So you want to show what you've done. For resumes that say like, I worked at one company, and for like, say we'll just use Amazon, for example. At Amazon for the past 5 years, I was a front-end engineer here, and that's all you put on your resume. Well, that doesn't tell me what you've done. It doesn't tell me
Yeah.
what languages you do. I think really, I mean, you don't want to overpower your resume, but you do want to like put in key achievements. And I always think like, put in a couple of data metrics, some metrics
Yeah.
you've done, to really make it stand out. I think there's a big misconception nowadays that when you apply for a role, you go through some robot that you have to have all these keywords. And that's all. I mean, I've been recruiting for almost like 8 years now, I want to say. I'm bad with math in my head. I've never once seen that. Like, no matter what, recruiters look at the resume. There's no software that I'm aware of where it's like, okay, we're going to look through these, like find these
Really?
keywords. Yeah. I mean, there might be that I don't know of. Like, I know if you're like doing searches on LinkedIn and stuff and keywords,
Yep.
but every application that comes through doesn't get rejected. You look at it, you're going to decide like, hey, like this is what I'm looking for. There's some questions that might be associated with it, and you're going to look at the answers to those questions as well. There's no like secret robot that
Yeah.
there rejects your resume. And I think that's kind of the problem we're trying to see resumes going to today, is like everybody's trying to beat the system, but by trying to beat the system is hurting them, because they're either not putting any information on their resume, or they're putting things in where the recruiter can't understand. And as recruiters, we give everybody a fair shot. But if you're giving very limited information and you're going up against say you and I are going up against each other
Yeah.
for a job, and my resume is just like, hey, I've done like two things, two roles, don't have much
Yeah.
information. And yours like, well, I've done this, optimized this programming. I then
Yeah.
moved up. And so I think putting in more information on what you're doing, and then instead of trying to beat the systems, is the key to getting this company.
Interesting. And so what like should I put on my resume though? Like what should be on my resume that if someone looks at it, they're like the 5 seconds, however many seconds you take to look at it, like what like really grabs your attention?
Yeah. So mine are, I like to see like, depending on where I'm at, I like to see either key accomplishments, like, if I am recruiting for, like, say, like, just to be a software engineer, like I've optimized my system to run like 3% smoother. Created code that used to take, 1,000, I don't know, think like 1,000 inputs to do, and I optimize it to only one, or I save money by composing this into the cloud and really making I'm totally spacing here, but like the Dockerization simpler for
Yeah.
AWS or something. Really just putting in key accomplishments instead of like listing off everything you've done.
Mm,
Just really those key accomplishments, and you really don't be afraid to really optimize it as well towards kind of the role that you want. So just because you have a lot of experience in one role, say that you're a back-end engineer and you want to become a front-end engineer. Well,
yeah.
optimize your resume for more of the front end stuff you worked on. Like it's great to step back end, but talk more about the front end stuff. Talk more about the different languages and programs you work, And
Yeah.
I think that's where it's at now, is really where it's just to make your resume tells a story about you, and you're trying to get your biography essentially out in 30 seconds or less.
That's really interesting. I think, yeah, because resumes to me, like when I was flinging out resumes when I was trying to get out of school, I would always just like, I would always send like a blanketed one, in all honesty. But a key that I think that I did that you touched on a little is I would find recruiters' emails at the companies I want to work for and then send them an email that covers like 3 bullet points of like my background and like, oh, here's also my resume. Um, and you said that recruiters actually look at that and like take that into account.
Mhm.
Is that like actually true? Is that, or is that just a waste of time back when I was doing this?
For myself and my team, like all the time, I'll get emails or I'll get LinkedIn messages saying, "Hey, I'm looking for this." I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like this is my role," but and then I message the recruiter on my team like, "Hey, this person just reached out to me. Here's their LinkedIn information. Take a
Yeah.
look at them," and vice versa. I get it all the time. So yeah, I mean, my team, the team I work on, we definitely do care about everybody. I mean, it's the same thing. Like
Yeah. That's
a
awesome.
few, yeah, a few bad apples ruin it, but I mean, I read every LinkedIn messages I get by the end of the day.
That's
And
awesome.
I try to help out. Even if I like don't have something for you, like I always respond like, "Hey, I'll keep you in mind." I'm one of those people where I don't like to be ghosted, so I don't want to ghost
Yeah.
people.
I feel that. I definitely feel that. So I'm curious. So you're at Amazon. You had a great experience. You're there for 2 years. You went to GTR staffing. You're there for 10 months. And then you come to BuzzFeed, which is a company with over 1,700 employees. And you are responsible for all the tech recruiting across like all the organizations. Share with us how you got into BuzzFeed and like what really brought your attention to BuzzFeed.
Yeah. So it's really funny, actually. It goes back to just, I'm one of those people that believe in, keeping in touch, having good friends. That goes back to where I started actually as a contractor at Amazon. One of the person I work closest with is a recruiting manager at BuzzFeed. So when the tech role opened up, he emailed
Uh,
me. He was like, "Hey, Dell, we have a new role open. Would you be interested in applying?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd be interested in applying." And because I was looking to get more. I was looking to get back to the corporate side. Like I have
yeah.
the utmost respect for recruiters that go out and contract for companies. It's a grind, and I mean, it's awesome. Like the utmost respect for people that do, but I was like, man, this is getting a little tough. And this was like, when I was at GTR, that was like peak of like the heck, I want to say like mountain where like
Yeah.
everybody's getting offers. So I was like, it might be nice to go back internal at this time. And so he passed my information over to the director of the team, and I met with her, and they put me through the gauntlet of interviews. Our interviewing at BuzzFeed is nothing. Well, I mean, it's not. They don't make it as difficult as like some of these bigger companies. But I met with
Interesting.
a bunch of people on the tech team, on the HR, the recruiting team to really see if I would be a good fit for them. And luck has it, like here I am now. So
Yeah. And I think BuzzFeed, they're like a really interesting company. It's a huge, amazing media company. And media, I think in the past few years has like really gotten like, oh, I want to work at a media company. I want to work at a media company. Kind of similar, like, oh, I want to work at a tech company. So what would you recommend to someone that wants to break into like a media company that doesn't have any media experience at all?
well, that's a great question. I think, I mean, to be fully honest, like obviously I don't really work on the media side. I think I work on
Yeah.
the tech side. But, I think nowadays social media is so prevalent in life,
Yeah.
that, I mean, you if you hear stories in like at BuzzFeed, where you create your own brand essentially, and the media companies will find you. They will come out. You're making TikToks. You have like lots of followers. I mean, I don't. My wife has like 1,000 followers on Instagram, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of followers. I thought, like I see these people like that come to we work with, and that the people that recruit kind of that side deal with, and I'm like, oh wow, that is a lot. Like I don't have social media, which is really weird for the company I work at. My Instagram got hacked like a year ago.
Yeah.
And I just said, you know what, I'm not dealing with this anymore. So I don't have it, but it's crazy just to see how you can really create your personal brand on like Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, Twitter. And you can really build your brand that way if you want to get into like a company that features media or influencers. And also I think another great way is I mean, there's lots of works for like freelancers and fellowships in media where you can really get your foot in the door, similar to a contractor, and you can build it up. And there, you same goes the same thing. You might love working there, or you might not love working there. And at the end of the day, it opens that opportunity a little bit more to the future.
Yeah. So it's building like a personal brand, and like that gives you the power to, like, if I reach out to you, be like, hey, like I have this TikTok following of 5,000 people. I love media. Let's chat. And that's something that you're super receptive to if you're on like the media recruiting side.
Yeah, I think I think we don't really recruit that. There's like a whole separate part of our organization that does that,
Yeah.
that finds it. But I mean, yeah, but I really think what helps though is like if you're gonna have like that 5,000 on TikTok, which I don't even know if that's considered an influencer nowadays. Like I think it is, you know, but don't have like I'm gonna talk about like on my TikTok or my Instagram today about cars. Tomorrow I'm gonna cook you something. The next day I'm gonna talk about this travel. Like you really want to be honing into what you're passionate about. And you really want to hone into like make it in that like lane. If you think of it, I mean, there's just so many different lifestyle and fashion trends where but what you're gonna really lose your audience if, I'm talking about one day, let's say like the Met Gala and the fashion choices of the Oscar, and then tomorrow I'm like, well, this is how
Yeah.
we're gonna change the oil on my 55 Camaro. This is just really
Yep.
hone
Yep.
in onto that niche and really build it in that way. I mean, it's really cool to see like what some of these niches are. And I never would have guessed that, but that makes complete sense.
I like being very specific on one brand, because then you can go to these huge media companies and be like, hey, I'm very specialized in marketing or sales or cars. And I think it
Yeah.
adds a lot more credibility to your background.
Yes, yeah, it's not like you're just trying it does not like there's nothing wrong about, like, having all this different stuff, but it seems like,
Yeah.
at times it's like, well, are you just trying to find something that takes off, which I totally understand that, but at the end of the day, you
Yeah.
don't really want to go and now I'm making a career about, creating TikToks and Instagrams about something you really don't like or not passionate about.
Exactly. And so we're going to hit our last bucket here as we kind of close this out. Recruiting. It's and the job market right now. It's extremely tough. There's a lot of layoffs within tech, just a lot of layoffs everywhere. If you could give like one piece of advice to someone that just got laid off, what would it be?
That's tough. I would say manage expectations. It's difficult to say that, but in my opinion, for the foreseeable future, the years of your maybe 5 years in tech, you're getting offered $300,000 total compensation packages. I don't see that happening anymore. The only reason that was happening was because one day Amazon woke up and decided to do it. Well, Google now wants to do it. Now Facebook, but really outside of those big
Yeah.
companies really couldn't offer those. So I think managing expectations when coming into it, like, you always want to, I always say like, ask for the most money you want to ask, but you also have to understand like when it comes back and it's not close, like the days of essentially expecting that is where it's at. It's not going to, I mean, it could happen, but it's not going to be, I feel like I was just hearing, especially like at Amazon during COVID, like, everybody's getting offered a tech, like
So much.
massive amounts of
A
contracts.
lot of money.
Yeah. And so it was just like, I don't, and, I think those days of people of getting that, I mean, that's great, but I think you're going to need more than like 5 years experience unless you're like in the hot like AI or data science right now. Um, and then also I think, really just leverage your network, just, I see it all the time. I love seeing like, hey, I just was laid off. You see all these comments underneath these for people. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's really cool to see that. And I think, just by doing that really helps out. And I think those are the two main things that will come to it.
Yeah. How do you leverage your existing network? So let's just say I got laid off from my job. Is it posting on LinkedIn like you just said, or like what are some of the ways that you should utilize your existing network?
Yeah. So I think posting on LinkedIn is a good way. But, but then you see the people like, well, I don't want to hear it. Like you got laid off. Like I'm tired of seeing
Yeah.
this, which I don't know. Everybody's to each their own, nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think also like a really cool thing, just look for little mixers and meetups. Every major tech. I mean, every city pretty much now has a tech hub in it someplace. I remember at
Yeah.
GTR, I was recruiting like Flutter engineers out of Tulsa. Like it's crazy, like to see where the migration of tech has gone. Go to tech meetups, meet people within the industry that might have that job. And I mean, also, you think of it during the peak of tech, every recruiter in the world was probably email. It was probably LinkedIn
Yeah.
messaging you. So go back, find those LinkedIn messages and just reach back out like, hey, I got laid off. Like, is this opportunity still available? Or do you know of any opportunity that's available?
That is a actual gem that I have not heard of. It's actually thinking about who messaged you during the peak. That is a gem.
Yes. That's why I always like respond to people. You never know. Like
Yeah.
I always respond to people because, if you don't, the one person you might not respond to might be the person to save you, or make you that million somehow. But yeah, I definitely go through and find those recruiters because us recruiters, we love to obviously help you get jobs. We also just love kind of when the people looking for the jobs come to us because we're so used to being rejected. It's nice to be accepted.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like it would going back to August 2020 to see like who was reaching out to me and reaching out to them and just saying, hey, like I was just impacted by layoffs. Do you like know of any roles? But the key
Yeah.
to that has to be you had to have like responded in the past. Right? Or could you just send them an email back?
I mean, I do get some that don't respond back to me, or they're like, "Hey, I'm just
Yeah.
getting this." I think as long as you were respectful during that time, you didn't tell, you get some lovely messages as recruiters. As long as you're respectful at the time, everybody's happy to help. Even if you weren't respectful, like we understand it, that we're happy to help. I mean, we understand we're a people business here, or we deal
Yeah.
with people every day that like, no, not everybody's going to respond, but as I said, like at the beginning, like I love helping people get jobs. So like if I have an opening, I'll definitely help you. But even if I don't have an opening, I'm recruiting typically connect with recruiters. So we'll see different jobs and send them over and be like, hey, go talk to Ryan. I just saw he posted a job that I think you'd be a good fit in.
That's awesome. So it
Yeah.
sounds like a lot of the podcasts that like we've been recording on Tech Guide, a lot of this sounds like a lot of like finding a job comes down to like the relationships you build with recruiters and like treating recruiters well because it like they are the ones that are going to help you find new jobs. And I think that kind of rings true to like what you've been talking about as well.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, as a recruiter, I get those messages from recruiters and I understand like the frustration that comes towards
Yeah.
recruiters at times. But at the end of the day, we're really just here to help and we're really here to help. Like my tagline on LinkedIn is to help you get your dream job in tech. And that's truly what I mean. It's very satisfying to help someone get their job. And one thing I like, here being internal against, like you get to see the people grow. And that's like awesome. Like when they like message you on Slack and they're like, man, I'm having such a great time here. Like, thank you so much
That is
again.
awesome.
So yeah, that's what we're here for. And I think we're underutilized at the end of the day because people just
That's
think
a
us as the gatekeepers, but we really aren't. We're here to help.
utilize recruiters. I
Yeah.
love that. And so last question for you. What is one way that someone could like stand out right now? If they were going to message you or if they're just in the interview process as itself, what's one way that they could really separate themselves from other candidates?
Yeah. I think it's going back to kind of what we talked about with your resume. Have your LinkedIn up to date. You, if you're a like a Golang engineer but you
Yeah.
have been using, oh man, what's like a hot new language. I can't think of one right now. There's so
Yeah.
many. But you like say you've changed completely out of Golang and we'll just use Python because that's comes top of mind. And you've been using Python for the last 3 years, but your last update on LinkedIn was Golang. You're like, well, why aren't I finding any Python jobs? Like, keep it up to date. I like to actually my LinkedIn is the exact same as my resume. So everything is that you can see because to stand out, LinkedIn is the one thing that has those data numbers, where we do our Boolean searches, like it has to like see something. So I think between LinkedIn, just keeping that up to date and find a recruiter in the company you want to go to and just reach out to them. Say, hey, like, are you guys hiring? I think that's the first question nowadays with, we see a lot of companies not hiring. And if they say, oh yeah, I'm hiring, just say, hey, don't just send them your resume. Don't say, here's my resume. Say, okay, well, I'm really interested. Go look at a job. I'm really interested in this job. You have like 10 minutes to chat about it. And, just make that intro and make yourself stand out. I mean, I was looking on LinkedIn just before this, just because there was like something on my feed about recruiter jobs. It was like, recruiters are having a hard time nowadays finding new jobs. And it was like one job application with like 2,000 applicants to it. So,
Oh my God.
yeah. So and then I was like, okay, well, I'm just kind of curious now. So I went and looked at a couple of like jobs on LinkedIn and I was like, a lot of them had like 500 to 1,000 applicants. And, people say being the first 50 to apply will help. Well, if you're number 1,000 and the job's only been open for 24 hours, find a recruiter at a company and reach out to them, I think that's just the biggest thing to do is don't be shy. I know it's tough, especially people don't like being vulnerable and kind of going out and asking for help getting a job is something that I feel, people just don't like to do. And just be vulnerable. Like we understand that that's what we're here to help you is to get you that job. We wouldn't be in this position if we didn't like helping people get jobs at the end of the day.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And I have loved this conversation. Dell, thank you so much for joining us. A lot of great tidbits on here about like contracting work, networking, all that good stuff. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.